Something funny happens when a show airs weekly. You forget, after years of binging everything in a single weekend sitting, what it feels like to live with a story for a few months. To carry it around, to think about it on your commute, or while you're doing the washing up, turning the same questions over and over like worry stones. The Boys has been doing that to me every Wednesday this April. Every Thursday morning I wake up knowing there's a new episode on Prime, and by midday I've watched it, and by midnight I'm still thinking about it, which is probably not ideal given that this is supposed to be a channel about helping you sleep. But here we are. Anyway, welcome back. If you're new here, the format is simple enough. We pick a show or a film or a piece of lore, we talk about it at length in a relaxed sort of way, and hopefully somewhere in the middle of all that, you drift off. Tonight we're doing The Boys Season 5. Specifically, we're going through the current state of play after 4 episodes, and then spending a lot of time on theories and predictions for how the final 4 episodes might go. Who lives? Who dies? What actually happens to Homelander? Whether Billy Butcher will survive long enough to see the ending he's been chasing for 5 years. There's loads to get through, so I'll try to keep things moving without rushing, if that makes sense. We'll start with a gentle catch-up on where things stand right now, then go character by character through the people whose fates feel most uncertain. There are a few genuine mysteries this season that I find properly interesting, and I'll get into those too. The finale is called Blood and Bone. It airs on the 20th of May, 2026. We've got 4 episodes left as of today, which means we're exactly halfway through the season. A good time to take stock, I think. If you enjoy this kind of thing, subscribing is always appreciated. It helps more than you'd think. But honestly, don't worry about it now. Get comfortable. Let's talk about The Boys. A few housekeeping notes before we start. This video assumes you're caught up through episode 4, King of Hell, which aired on the 22nd of April, 2026. If you're not there yet, and you'd rather not have things spoiled, now's the time to pause. There will be full spoilers throughout. We'll be covering everything from who's died so far, to specific plot details, to theories about how the finale might go. Also, and this is the nature of a predictions video, some of what I say is going to be wrong. Maybe a lot of it. That's fine. Being wrong about a show you love is part of being a fan of it. I'd rather make genuine predictions and be wrong than hedge everything so thoroughly that the conversation becomes pointless. So take all of this as enthusiastic speculation from someone who has spent probably more time than is strictly healthy thinking about The Boys Season 5. One more thing. The Boys is a show with a fair amount of graphic content, and this video is going to describe some of that in passing. Nothing I'll dwell on, but worth knowing going in. Now, properly this time, let's begin. One of the things The Boys has always done well is making its dystopia feel like a plausible extrapolation of things we already have. It's not some distant, strange future. It's more like a funhouse mirror held up to the present moment, reflecting back something recognizable but distorted. And Season 5, more than any season before it, leans into that. The world we're watching right now is one where Homelander controls the American government. That's not hyperbole. He's not just influential, not just powerful in a celebrity sense. He had the elected president arrested on live television. He declared martial law. He's placed supes in law enforcement roles as de facto soldiers. There's a kind of creeping normalization happening in the background of every scene, where things that would have been absolutely unthinkable 4 seasons ago now just sort of are. People are adjusting, people are complying, and a disturbingly large segment of the population, the ones who'd always wanted someone to say the quiet part loud, are genuinely enthusiastic about all of it. So that's where we pick up, about 6 months after the events of the Season 4 finale, and picking up roughly in line with where Gen 5 Season 2 left off. At the end of Season 4, things had gone about as badly as possible. Homelander had the government, President Singer was gone. Ryan, Homelander's son, had killed Grace Mallory in a rage and gone on the run. Mother's Milk, Frenchie, and Huey had all been captured and thrown into what the show calls a freedom camp, which is exactly as grim as it sounds. essentially a labour camp managed by supes, where people deemed enemies of Homelander's new order are sent to be broken. Starlight and Kimiko escaped. Butcher, having just murdered Vice President Victoria Newman in cold blood, drove off alone into the night with a sample of the soup-killing virus. And Soldier Boy, last seen put back into cryogenic suspension at the end of Season 3, had his location revealed to Homelander in a post-credits scene. Season 5 begins 6 months into all of that, and the first episode, 15 Inches of Sheer Dynamite, opens with one of the most quietly brutal moments the show has ever done. Homelander kills A-Train, not in a battle, not in some dramatic confrontation. He just wraps his hands around Reggie Franklin's throat and strangles him to death in what feels almost like an administrative decision, a loose end being tied off. But before we get to that, there's the Freedom Camp, which the show established at the end of Season 4 and which Season 5 opens in. These are the camps where Homelander's forces have been sending anyone deemed an enemy of the New Order. Journalists, activists, Starlight sympathizers, people who are in the wrong place at the wrong time. The conditions are grim in the way the show depicts grimness, which is to say, not melodramatically, but with a specific documentary quality. People doing what people do in impossible situations, finding small dignities, looking after each other, making gallows jokes, trying not to give up. Huey, Mother's Milk, and Frenchie are in there together when the season starts, and the show takes the time to establish what 6 months in that environment has done to each of them before Butcher and Starlight break them out. Has been the steadiest, in the way of people who have decided that steadiness is an act of resistance. Frenchie has been making friends, because Frenchie always makes friends. Huey has been trying to hold on to something, a version of himself that believes this can still be fixed, that the world hasn't fundamentally changed, that there's a path out that doesn't require becoming something he doesn't want to be. The Freedom Camp as a setting tells you a lot about where the show is ideologically in its final season. It's not a metaphor, or not only a metaphor, it's a specific, considered depiction of what happens to civil society when supes enforce law and the law serves one man's ego. The show has always been interested in the institutional infrastructure of power, and the camps are the most direct expression yet of what that infrastructure looks like when it fully actualizes. Not a distant threat, the thing itself. A-Train has had one of the most complicated arcs of any character in this show. He started as a coward and an enabler, someone who looks the other way at unspeakable things because looking the other way suited his career. And then over 4 seasons, very slowly, he started to change. He helped Starlight. He tried to do something right, even when it cost him. He went back to his community. He chose his brother. And then Homelander strangled him. And that was that. The show was never going to let him fully escape what he'd been a part of, but it still landed harder than I expected. The rest of Episode 1 establishes the season's central problems. Butcher, having taken Compound 5 to treat his terminal cancer in Season 4, has developed a rather alarming side effect, a cancerous tentacled parasite living inside him, which occasionally erupts from his body when he's under stress or actively trying to kill someone. It's disgusting and frightening and also somehow very on brand for him. He visits his father Sam in London, and though we don't see it happen, the next episode confirms he killed him. His cancerous tentacles are the last thing Sam Butcher ever encountered, which tells you a lot about where Billy is, emotionally and morally, at the start of this season. The escape from the Freedom Camp is wild, chaotic, and involves a soup called the Worm, whose powers involve eating soil and, well, defecating it out. The boys are nothing if not consistent with their aesthetic choices. The point is that the gang gets back together, and they regroup at what turns out to be an abandoned elementary school in Pennsylvania, which Butcher and Dr. Samir Shah have converted into a makeshift lab for the soup-killing virus. Now, Dr. Shah is an important figure here. He's the scientist who was originally working on the virus for Victoria Newman, and Butcher faked his death, kept him captive, and has been forcing him to continue refining the formula. Shah, understandably, is not thrilled about this arrangement, but he's also furious at Homelander for killing Victoria Newman, which gives him at least some motivation to see this through. It's one of those messy, morally compromised alliances the show does so well. Episode 2 is called Teenage Kicks, and it's where the season's central problem gets properly established. The boys need to test the virus. They pick a supe called Rock Hard, who lives with a team of young TikTok-era supes called Teenage Kicks. Rock Hard is, essentially, a living mountain of volcanic granite, which presents certain logistical challenges when you're trying to quietly drag someone to a lab for testing. The plan goes sideways in the expected fashion, and they end up sealing him in his own room and releasing the virus there. The virus works on Rock Hard, it works on a few of his Teenage Kicks colleagues, and then Soldier Boy shows up, because Homelander has thawed him out and pointed him at Butcher. Soldier Boy gets exposed to the virus, collapses, gets put in a body bag, and then, at the very end of the episode, sits straight up, alive. The reason for this, which we'll get into properly in its own section, is V1, the original first version of Compound V, which is running through Soldier Boy's veins and apparently makes him immune, or at least resistant, which means the boy's only real weapon against Homelander might not work. Because Homelander, as it turns out, may also have V1 in his blood. Episode 3, Every One of You Sons of Bitches, is the one that broke me a little. Ryan, who has been on the run since Season 4, does something genuinely brave and genuinely foolish in equal measure. He calls Homelander to a meeting at the recently renamed Planet Homelander restaurant, intending to confront him directly about raping his mother, Becca. It's the kind of thing you do when you're young and furious and haven't quite grasped the gap between moral rightness and practical outcome. Homelander lies, prevaricates, and then beats Ryan within an inch of his life, just holds him down and pulverizes him, in a scene that's harrowing, partly because of the violence and partly because you can see something deeply twisted in Homelander's face, something that looks almost like grief, underneath all the cruelty. Butcher finds Ryan afterwards, still breathing but barely. In the same episode, the boys discover that Homelander has created the Democratic Church of America, with O Father, a new suit played by Daveed Diggs, as his evangelist. And this is where things take a turn that feels uncomfortably current. O Father has a hypnotic quality to his voice, not a supernatural one exactly, just an extraordinary charisma and the ability to work a crowd into a kind of fervour. Watching him deliver A-Train's eulogy at the start of episode 2, blaming A-Train's death on Starlight and her followers, calling them demon-possessed, calling for war. It's disturbing in a way that The Boys is very good at making disturbing. Not cartoonish, just real. Episode 4, King of Hell, is where Homelander's ascent to actual godhood begins. He takes his place at the head of the church. He receives what he perceives as a divine vision, a woman's voice, possibly Madeline Stillwell's, telling him he's destined for something greater. The hunt for V1 is fully underway. The boys try to use Stan Edgar as a source of information and get absolutely hammered for their trouble. Edgar is captured by the Deep for Homelander, and Starlight has to flee in panic. And Butcher, in a rare moment of clarity, looks Homelander dead in the eye and tells him he's going to be the one to kill him. Homelander looks back at him and says the virus is a bluff. He might be right. One of the things that strikes me about this season, more than any previous one, is how the show handles the texture of authoritarianism as a daily experience. It's not all flags and marching and laser beams. A lot of it is smaller than that. It's the way people at Vought now speak to each other, carefully, measuring every word against how it might be reported. It's Ashley Barrett's particular brand of nervous energy, the way she's learned to agree enthusiastically with things she clearly finds troubling. It's the normalization buried in small moments, the news anchors who've learned the right tone for discussing Homelander's decisions, the public who've adjusted their expectations of what a normal Tuesday looks like. The show has always been political satire, and has always been willing to be specific about what it's satirizing. But Season 5 is less satirical in the traditional sense. It's moved from here's an exaggerated version of the thing to something closer to here's a version of the thing that is currently keeping pace with real events. Kripke wrote the season before the 2024 US election, and he's talked openly about the fact that certain plot points have since happened in reality. The show is trying to stay a step ahead of current events, and the events keep catching up. What that means for the viewing experience is that some of the comedy has drained out. The Boys was always funny, darkly, uncomfortably, sometimes hysterically funny. Season 5 is still funny in the way that Orwell is funny, in the way that satire is funny, when it's also telling you something true that you'd rather not hear. But there's less of the gonzo absurdism that made Season 1 and 2 so propulsive, and more of a slow burn dread, which is the right choice given where the story is. You can't play America under Homelander for laughs anymore. One small detail I haven't stopped thinking about. The elementary school the boys use as their base in Pennsylvania. It's abandoned, obviously, shut down at some point in the timeline. And the show doesn't make a big deal of it, doesn't deliver a speech about it, just lets the setting exist as a kind of commentary in the background. Educational institutions, the spaces where the next generation is supposed to learn the tools they'll need to resist and think critically, closed, used as a lab for manufacturing weapons instead. It's subtle for a show that usually isn't, and it works precisely because of that subtlety. So that's where we are, 4 episodes in, halfway through the final season, and almost nothing has gone according to plan, which, honestly, is The Boys in a nutshell. There's a scene in episode 2 where Homelander is alone with A-Train's corpse after the rest of the 7 have left the funeral home, and he stands there and talks to him. He says he didn't want to kill him. He says he trusted him. He says the strong are always alone because nobody can truly understand them. And you watch it and you think, this man genuinely believes every word of that. He's not performing grief for an audience that isn't there. He actually feels it. He actually thinks he's the victim in a situation where he just strangled someone to death. That particular flavour of self-delusion has always been what makes Homelander compelling rather than just horrible. Other shows have done charismatic villains. Very few have done a villain this precisely calibrated, one who is monstrous and pitiable in roughly equal measure, and whose capacity for both seems to come from exactly the same wound. He was created in a lab. He was raised without love. He was given unlimited power and zero emotional tools for managing it. And then the world confirmed, over and over, that he could take whatever he wanted and nothing would happen. So he did. 5 seasons in, we're watching what that accumulates to. Not a supervillain twirling a mustache. A man who has genuinely convinced himself that he is God, and that the people suffering around him are simply the necessary byproduct of divine rule. Which makes the question of how he ends all the more interesting. The most obvious answer is that he dies, and there's a strong argument for it. Kripke has said plainly that he will not end this show with Homelander winning. The show's entire moral architecture, its argument about power, accountability, and the systems that enable people like Homelander to exist, requires some kind of reckoning. You can't spend 5 seasons building toward a confrontation and then not have one. But the manner of his death, assuming he does die, is where things get complicated. The first thing worth noting is V1, which is this season's central MacGuffin and something we'll talk about more in its own section shortly. Very short version. V1 is the original form of Compound V, developed by Vought in the 1940s, and it makes supes both more powerful and resistant to the soup-killing virus the boys have been developing. Homelander wants it because he's been noticing grey hairs, which for a man who considers himself divine is an existential crisis of the First Order. He wants to stop aging. He wants to become literally unkillable. Now there's a theory circulating that the show has been setting up a scenario where Homelander doesn't die in the traditional sense, where instead his powers are stripped from him A-Train says it almost directly before he's killed. Take away these powers and what are you, huh? It reads, in retrospect, as something deliberately planted. And there's the moment, in the Season 5 trailer, where Homelander steps into Soldier Boy's cryo chamber, almost contemplatively, which feels like the kind of visual detail the show puts in carefully. Soldier Boy's radiation blasts have the ability to neutralize Compound 5 in a soup's body. We saw it with Queen Maeve in Season 3, whose powers were permanently removed by a blast. If Soldier Boy could hit Homelander at full force, that could theoretically strip his abilities. And there's also Marie Moreau from Gen V, whose blood manipulation powers may be able to interact with the V1 compounds in a way nobody else can manage. Though we'll come to her properly later. The fate worse than death argument is one I've seen a lot in fan discussions, and I think there's something to it. The argument goes, killing Homelander gives him a kind of dignity. It ends things cleanly. But leaving him alive, powerless, despised, unable to fly or laser anyone, facing the full weight of what he's done without any of the armor he's always hidden behind. That's the thing he would find genuinely unbearable. A man who defines himself entirely by superiority, stripped of every quality that made him feel superior. Death is too good for him, is how one Reddit thread put it, and I don't know if I fully agree, but I understand the sentiment. What I keep coming back to is this. The show has spent a lot of time this season emphasizing that Homelander is aging, plucking grey hairs, having visions of Madeline Stillwell urging him toward godhood, desperately chasing immortality. There's something very human in that fear, and the show knows it. The god who wants to be a god, because he's terrified of being mortal. The most powerful being on Earth who still can't escape the basic indignities of having a human body. I think he dies. I think the show earns it, and I think whoever delivers the killing blow will pay a price for it that the show doesn't let them escape. Anthony Starr has been exceptional in this role for 5 years, and whatever ending they give Homelander, I think they'll do justice to the performance. But it's worth sitting with the psychology a bit more, because I think the show has been building towards something specific with the church sequence. The Democratic Church of America is not just a power play, it's the expression of something Homelander has been unable to articulate, but has always needed. A framework that makes his existence not just tolerable, but necessary. He doesn't just want to be powerful, he wants to be valid. He wants a story in which his suffering was meaningful, his abandonment was divine rather than accidental, his violence was righteous rather than pathological. Religion gives him that story, and O Father, as his high priest, has been deliberately feeding it to him. There's a real question about whether Homelander can actually be contained by a story. He's never been good at accepting limits, including narrative ones. The history of Season 5 so far is a history of Homelander consuming the things meant to serve him. A-Train, who became inconvenient. Soldier Boy, who was supposed to be a weapon and became a complication. The church itself, which he may discover he can't fully control. O Father's hypnotic quality works on congregations. It's not clear it works on Homelander, who may simply have too much ego to be susceptible to anyone else's authority, even a divine one. There's also the specific question of what happens if Homelander gets V1 and it doesn't do what he expects. The formula is genuinely unstable. The show has been deliberate about that. It worked on Soldier Boy and on Stormfront, but it killed the majority of everyone else who tried it, including dozens of test subjects in World War II era Vought experiments. If Homelander takes V1 and it destabilizes his existing powers in some unexpected way, that's a different kind of ending. Not death from external violence, but a kind of internal collapse. A god brought down, not by his enemies, but by the very thing he sought to complete his divinity. The grey hairs keep coming back to me as a detail. Such a small human detail. A man plucking grey hairs in a bathroom mirror. Someone who can also fly and vaporize people with his eyes. Terrified of aging. The grandiosity and the fragility sitting right next to each other. That's what Anthony Starr has always understood, about this character that makes him watchable despite everything else. The scene at Planet Homelander in episode 3 is one of those moments that's going to stay with me for a while. Ryan walks into that restaurant, calls his father there, and then in a voice that's trying very hard to be steady, asks him about Becca, asks him to tell the truth about what he did. And Homelander lies, obviously, but then the lying runs out, and what's left isn't anger exactly. It's more like a kind of exhaustion, as if Homelander has simply gotten tired of the performance. He holds his son down and beats him, methodically, without real heat. Like something he's decided to get done. Cameron Crovetti, who plays Ryan, is just brilliant in it. He's been quietly brilliant since season 2 actually, but this season he's being asked to carry a lot, and he's doing it. Ryan's story is one of the most genuinely tragic ones in a show full of tragic stories. He was born from an assault. He grew up hidden, sheltered, in what was essentially a protected arrangement that Vought put in place for Becca Butcher. He accidentally killed his own mother in season 2 when his heat vision activated involuntarily during a moment of extreme stress. That guilt, that particular weight, has sat at the centre of everything he does since. Season 3 had a moment that genuinely frightened people. Homelander lasered a protester in a crowd, and Ryan standing next to him smiled. It was a small smile, almost reflexive, and the camera lingered on it just long enough. The show asking, what if he becomes his father? What if the environment wins? Season 4 walks that back. Ryan started questioning things, started pushing back, started making choices that suggested he'd inherited more of Becca than Homelander wanted to admit. And now season 5 has him beaten half to death on the floor of a restaurant, having tried to do the right thing in exactly the wrong way. There's a theory, and it's the one that feels most structurally sound to me, that Ryan is the person who ultimately kills Homelander. Not Butcher, not the virus. Ryan. The reasoning holds up. In the original comics, Black Noir kills Homelander. But Black Noir in the comics is a secret Homelander clone, a backup weapon Vought created in case Homelander ever needed to be stopped. That particular wrinkle was dropped for the show. Kripke confirmed years ago that Black Noir is not a Homelander clone, but the function still needs to exist somewhere. Someone genetically equivalent to Homelander, powerful enough to actually fight him, with the moral grounding to actually do it. Ryan is the show's version of that character. It was always him, and there's something thematically resonant about it that goes beyond just strongest person wins. Homelander's deepest wound, the thing that drives every terrible decision he's ever made, is the need to be loved. He has never, in his entire existence, felt genuinely loved. He's been used, feared, worshipped, but not loved. The one relationship that came closest to something real was with Ryan, and having that relationship end with his son killing him is not just narratively satisfying, it's the specific kind of painful that this show traffics in. Kripke told Business Insider that he would not end the series with Homelander winning, and separately, he's talked extensively about how the father-son dynamic is the emotional spine of season 5. Those two things, held alongside each other, point in one direction. The harder question is what killing his father does to Ryan, because this show is not interested in clean victories. If Ryan kills Homelander, he lives with that. He carries it. He becomes the person who did that thing, and the world responds to him differently because of it. There's a version where killing Homelander saves Ryan's soul, where it's the final proof that he chose to be different from his father. And there's another version where it costs him something he can't get back. What happens after is genuinely uncertain. He's not a villain. He's not a hero in any conventional sense. He's a traumatized kid with superpowers who has spent his whole life trying to figure out how to be a person. Whatever ending the show gives him, I hope it acknowledges that complexity rather than resolving it neatly. Butcher finding him after the beating in episode 3, touching his cheek, checking he's still breathing. It's a small moment, done quietly, but it matters. Because for all that Butcher has become something monstrous this season, His feeling toward Ryan has always been one of the show's genuine emotional through lines. He promised Becca he'd look after her son. He's been failing at it in spectacular fashion, but he hasn't stopped trying. Whether that promise becomes relevant again in the finale feels like one of the things worth watching for. One thing I keep returning to about Ryan is the specific isolation of his position. He's not a boy. He's not a supe in Homelander's camp. He's not human in the ordinary sense, not with powers like his. He exists in a gap between every category the show has established, and that gap is where his story lives. The show has never pretended that gap is comfortable. It's profoundly uncomfortable. He's a teenager who has killed people he loved, who has done things he can't undo, who has powers he didn't ask for, and a father who represents everything he doesn't want to be. Becca's memory is the ghost that runs through his arc. She died trying to protect him. She chose a life in hiding rather than expose him to Vought. And the thing Ryan keeps returning to, whether in conversations or in the moments where the camera lingers on his face, is the question of whether he can be what she would have wanted, whether the person she protected is worth having protected. That's not a question the show answers easily, and I think the finale won't either, but it'll ask it one more time, probably in the moment that matters most. There's also the question of what it means for Ryan to survive in a world after Homelander. Homelander has structured everything for Ryan's entire conscious life around a particular story. The strong rule, the weak comply, love is a transaction, power is its own justification. Dismantling that story, if Ryan is the one who does it, doesn't automatically give him a replacement. What does a young man with Homelander's abilities do in a world that no longer has Homelander to define itself against? That's a question the show might gesture at without fully answering, and that's probably right. Some questions you live into rather than solve. There's a version of Billy Butcher that it's possible to root for. The show gave him to us in season 1, driven, ruthless, but pointed at something that felt genuinely worth fighting. The supes killed his wife. In his understanding of things, he would make them pay. He'd organised a ragtag group of normal people to fight back against corporate superheroes, and however unhinged his methods, the target felt right. 5 seasons later, Billy Butcher is something considerably harder to look at. He's still fighting the same war. He's just stopped caring who gets hurt in the process. He took Temp V in season 3, developed terminal cancer from the overuse of it, and then took full compound V in season 4 to try to manage the cancer, which instead mutated it into something considerably worse. What he has now is a tumour that has apparently developed a survival instinct. Tentacles erupt from him when he's under stress. They're powerful enough to kill. They're also clearly killing him. He killed Victoria Newman, who the rest of the boys wanted to keep alive. He's been holding Dr. Samir Shah in what amounts to captivity, forcing him to develop the virus. He killed his own father, Sam, which the show confirms almost as an afterthought in a throwaway line. And his position on the soup-killing virus is the one that's fracturing the team most severely. He wants to release it, knowing it will kill Starlight and Kimiko. He doesn't care. In his view, getting rid of all supes, including the ones he knows and loves, is an acceptable trade for stopping Homelander. The greater good, as defined by a dying man with a tentacle problem. What's genuinely interesting about Butcher this season is that the show isn't letting you write him off entirely, even now. He's done terrible things, but there are still moments where something else breaks through. The moment he found Ryan after the beating, the way he speaks to Huey, even when they're at each other's throats. Some residue of the person he used to be, or the person he always wanted to be. The show keeps it there, just enough to make you watch him carefully. His relationship with MM and Frenchie this season is another thing worth noting. In previous seasons, the team had a kind of functional family structure, held together by the shared mission and the specific bonds that form between people who've survived the same impossible situations. That structure is under more strain this season than ever before. has been clearer-eyed about Butcher's decline than anyone, and the confrontations between them in episodes 3 and 4 have had a particular edge. Not the usual friction of people who disagree, but something closer to grief. Is watching someone he cares about become something he can't endorse, and he doesn't have the luxury of looking away. Frenchie's relationship with Butcher has always been slightly different, a little more oblique, a little more patient. Frenchie has seen more of what broken people look like from the inside, given his own history, and he reads Butcher with a kind of compassion that doesn't excuse anything, but at least understands the architecture of how someone gets there. Whether that compassion survives the back half of the season, given what episode 7 may bring, is an open question. The thing about Butcher's arc that the show has threaded through with particular care is the question of what he actually wanted. Not tactically, he wanted to stop Homelander. That much was always clear. But underneath the mission, he wanted to avenge Becca. He wanted to undo the thing that was done to her. And the show has been quietly pointing out, for several seasons, that the kind of damage Homelander represents isn't the kind that gets undone. It can only be stopped from happening again. Butcher, who built his entire identity on revenge, has been slowly learning that lesson in the worst possible way. Whether he accepts it before the end is the question I'm most interested in. The question of how Butcher dies, because I do think he dies, has several possible answers. The cancer could simply take him. It's been escalating all season, and the tentacle mutation has made it clear this is not a condition that resolves. He could go out quietly, which would be a strange choice for a show like this, but also would feel, in its own way, like an earned end. He died fighting. The fight just happened to be inside his own body. The comics offer a different ending. Butcher kills Mother's Milk, kills Frenchie and Kimiko, kills several others. Huey, in the end, stabs him to death, partly because Butcher manipulates him into it. It's bleak, and it's the most extreme version of the Butcher becomes what he hates arc. The show won't go that far. It's already positioned Butcher differently, and Carl Urban has played him with enough humanity that the show would be betraying its own characterization to end it that way. But a version of it, a self-arranged death, a deliberate choice to end things on his own terms rather than the cancer's, feels plausible. Butcher sacrificing himself to deal the killing blow against Homelander, using the tentacle mutation as a weapon one final time, and burning himself out in the process. That would feel earned. It would be the inverse of the show's usual logic, where power is always accompanied by corruption. Here, power consumed in service of something worth doing. There's a scene early in episode 1 where Butcher confronts his father Sam. We don't see what happens, but we hear it, the sound of what Butcher does. And the show holds on that sound for a moment longer than necessary. There's something in it that feels like the show asking you to sit with who this man has become, and to hold that alongside everything else you know about him. Not to forgive him, not to condemn him entirely, just to see him clearly. He's been the show's most complicated character from the beginning. I suspect the ending will honour that complexity, even if it doesn't give him redemption in any clean sense. Some damage doesn't get undone. The show knows that. Butcher knows that. The parallel between Butcher and Homelander has been the show's central structural argument, and Season 5 is pressing on it harder than ever. Both of them are men shaped by early violence, by fathers who damaged them, by losses that hollowed them out and left a driving fury in place of whatever had been there before. Both of them are convinced, genuinely convinced, that they are doing what needs to be done. The difference, and it has always been this, is that Homelander was never offered an alternative, was never given tools for anything other than power and force, whereas Butcher chose. He made the choice to become this, over a long series of moments, and the show hasn't let him forget that. What Carl Urban brings to it is a refusal to make it comfortable. He plays Butcher's worst moments without apology, and without self-pity, which is harder than it sounds. A lesser performance would ask the audience to forgive Butcher by showing his pain too prominently. Urban never quite does that. The pain is there, but it sits alongside the damage he causes rather than justifying it. You understand him. You don't get to excuse him. There's a conversation between Butcher and Huey at some point in almost every season that I think of as the show's recurring emotional signature. The moments where these two men, who are absolutely wrong for each other in almost every practical sense, somehow find the thing that connects them. Season 5 has been hard on that connection, harder than any previous season. I think the finale has one more of those conversations in it, and I think it happens at the worst possible moment, right before the end. Whether it's a reconciliation or a final rupture, I genuinely don't know, but I think it's there. I think the show owes it to both of them. He's going to die. I'm fairly certain of it, and I think when it happens, it's going to hurt more than most of the deaths this show has ever done, because we've been watching him for 5 years, and somewhere in there, despite everything, you came to care about him. That's the achievement. That's what good writing does with a character like this. One of the things I find genuinely clever about Season 5, now that we're 4 episodes in, is the way it's been quietly dismantling the boys' plan in real time. They started this season with what felt like a weapon, a real one. The soup-killing virus originated from the woods at Godolkin University in Gen 5. A particular strain developed from experiments conducted at the school, initially intended for different purposes, eventually refined into something capable of killing supes. Butcher got hold of the last remaining sample at the end of Gen 5 Season 2. He forced Dr. Samir Shah to continue working on it. By the time Season 5 begins, they have something they believe will work. The problem is that the testing has revealed complications they didn't anticipate. The most basic complication is moral, and it's been there from the start. The virus doesn't discriminate. It would kill Homelander, it would also kill Starlight, it would kill Kimiko, it would potentially kill every soup on the planet, including people who are not Homelander and are not causing anyone harm. Butcher's position, that this is an acceptable trade, is the thing that's most fractured the team this season. Huey is appalled. MM and Starlight are caught somewhere in between, acknowledging the logic of Butcher's argument while finding the conclusion monstrous. But the deeper complication is the one Episode 2 introduced. Soldier Boy survived the virus. The reason comes back to V1, which I mentioned briefly in the Homelander section. The full version? V1 is the original Compound V formula created by Frederick Vought in the 1940s. Unlike modern Compound V, V1's molecular structure doesn't have the spiked receptors that the virus is designed to target, which means the virus essentially can't attach to V1-based soups. They're resistant to it, not necessarily entirely immune, but resistant enough that Soldier Boy walked away from a direct exposure. This is a problem for several reasons. The most obvious is that Homelander was created differently from the other members of the Seven. Regular soups had Compound Phi injected into them as infants. Homelander's embryo was injected with the serum while still in the womb, and the resulting exposure was more total, more fundamental. According to Dr. Shah's research, and to what was established in Gen 5 about Thomas Godolkin's Project Odessa experiments, Homelander likely has V1-like compounds in his blood, which means the current version of the virus probably wouldn't kill him either. So the boys need a new formula, or a different plan entirely. There are a few directions this could go. One is that they develop a V1-specific version of the virus, a new formula targeting the different molecular structure. This is theoretically possible, but would require time and resources they may not have. Another is that someone finds a way to strip Homelander of V1 protection before the virus is deployed, which is where Soldier Boy's radiation blasts become relevant again, since they've been established as capable of purging Compound 5 from a super's body. A third option, and the one I find most interesting, involves Marie Moreau. Her power is blood manipulation, and it operates at a level that suggests she can interact with Compound 5 in ways other people can't. In Gen 5 Season 2, she was able to cure a soup of their powers under certain conditions. If she can do something similar to Homelander's V1, render it inert, change its structure, remove its resistance to the virus, that would be a significant contribution to the finale, and it would explain why Kripke has been keeping the Gen V characters off-screen thus far, saving them for when they're most needed. The moral dimension of the virus debate is also not going away. Even if they solve the technical problem, they still have to decide what to do with a weapon that can kill every supe on the planet. Butcher's instinct is to use it. The rest of the team's instinct is to find a more targeted option. That tension is going to need resolution, and I suspect the resolution won't make everyone happy. Fun detail, the supe-killing virus has a kind of Gen V to boys pipeline that the show has been quietly building for a while, and it's one of the more satisfying ways the two shows have been connected. The virus started at God U as a consequence of experiments there, and it ends up as the weapon in the final fight against Vought. There's something poetic about that, and slightly horrifying, which is on brand. Where I think this lands, the virus works in the end, but not on Homelander directly. It becomes part of the solution rather than the whole solution. The final reckoning with Homelander is going to be personal, not chemical. Butcher, Ryan, Soldier Boy, in various combinations for various reasons, will be the ones who actually end his reign. The virus is a component, not the conclusion. There's something worth noting about the internal politics of the virus debate, because the show has used it to do something interesting with the team dynamics. The question of whether to deploy a weapon that kills your own people, your own friends, to stop a greater threat is not a new moral question. But the show personalizes it in a way that makes it feel immediate rather than abstract. It's not hypothetical civilians. It's Kimiko. It's Starlight. They're standing right there, in the same room, and everyone can see them. Butcher's willingness to sacrifice them says something specific about where he's got to. It says he stopped thinking of the people around him as people he owes anything to, and started thinking of them as variables in a calculation, which is exactly what Vought does, which is exactly what the show has always said power does. Given enough time and enough justification, he became the thing. Not all the way, not completely, but enough to recognize it if you're looking. Yui's refusal to accept this is not naive. The show doesn't play it as naivety. It plays it as the one person in the room who has decided that there are lines worth holding, regardless of the strategic argument for crossing them. And the show doesn't necessarily validate that position. The strategic argument is real, but it gives it weight. It takes it seriously. That matters. The question of what happens to Starlight and Kimiko specifically in relation to the virus is one of the unresolved things I'm most curious about. Whether there's a version of the formula that doesn't kill them. Whether the V1 question creates a path where the virus is deployed in a more targeted way than Butcher originally planned. Whether the whole virus thread ends with it being used at all, or whether events overtake it and the finale finds a different route entirely. There's something surreal about the fact that Jensen Ackles is a series regular this season. In Season 3, Soldier Boy was introduced as a major antagonist, someone whose cruelty and selfishness and casual bigotry were pitched as a kind of original sin in the history of American supes, the thing that everything rotten descended from. And then he was put back in a cryo chamber and handed off, and we moved on. Bringing him back as a regular for the final season was a choice Kripke explained pretty clearly. He wanted to explore the father-son dynamic between Soldier Boy and Homelander, because that's what it is in a biological sense. Soldier Boy is Homelander's father. Homelander knows it. Soldier Boy knows it. And the feelings involved are, predictably, a complete mess. Soldier Boy does not love his son. He's not even sure he likes him. He views Homelander with a kind of competitive contempt. Another powerful man in a world where Soldier Boy had previously been the most powerful man, and who surpassed him in ways he finds both infuriating and secretly threatening. What he mostly wants from the relationship, as far as we can tell, is validation, recognition. the specific satisfaction of being acknowledged as the source of this extraordinary thing. Homelander, for his part, desperately wants a father. It's one of his most persistent wounds. He had Madeline Stillwell in a maternal role of sorts, but never a father. And here is his biological one, thawed out and apparently willing to work with him. Homelander freed him from cryo, pointed him at Butcher, made him an offer, tracked down Butcher and his people, and in return, Homelander would restore Soldier Boy's reputation and make him the perfect hero again. What Homelander didn't tell Soldier Boy is that the boys have a soup-killing virus, and that walking into their base would expose him to it, which it did. Soldier Boy collapsed, got put in a body bag, sat up at the end of episode 2, alive, for reasons that come back to V1 and his molecular resistance to the virus. So now he's alive, he knows he's been used, and his position relative to both Homelander and Butcher is genuinely uncertain. Here's the interesting thing about episode 4. Soldier Boy wants to destroy any remaining V1 sample. His reasoning is explicitly selfish. He doesn't want Homelander to become his equal in terms of immunity and immortality. He wants to remain the one thing Homelander can't fully claim for himself. But his selfishness here accidentally aligns with what the boys need. They don't want Homelander to get his hands on V1 either. There's a version of the remaining episodes where Soldier Boy becomes a reluctant ally, not because he's had a redemption arc or experienced a change of heart, but because his interests happen to point in the same direction as theirs for a moment. That's the kind of morally messy alliance this show has always been good at. And then there's the Stormfront question, which Soldier Boy dropped like a bomb at the end of episode 4. "Did you see a body?" is what he asks about Stormfront, and we'll get into that in the next section. But the point is that Soldier Boy's presence opens up possibilities the show hadn't previously had available, and the creative team clearly has a plan for him. Jensen Ackles, by the way, is having a lot of fun with this role. There's a particular kind of performative machismo that Soldier Boy has. The World War II hero, the original American supe, the guy who genuinely believes his own mythology, and Ackles plays it with this delightful undercurrent of fragility. He's the most powerful person in any room he's ever been in, except when Homelander walks in, and the adjustment he has to make in those moments is genuinely funny in a dark way. The supernatural reunion aspect of the season is something that fans have been making a lot of noise about. Kripke created Supernatural, and Jensen Ackles was one of its leads for 15 seasons. Jared Padalecki has joined Season 5 as a new super called Mr. Marathon, and Misha Collins has a guest role too. Kripke made a joke about completing his supernatural Pokemon collection, which is the kind of self-aware comment that only works if you're willing to lean into it. And the show has been lean into it. Where does Soldier Boy end up, boy? That's the question. I think he either dies fighting Homelander, taking a radiation blast of his own to strip his son's powers in some final gesture that's more self-interested than heroic, or he survives to become a character in the Vought Rising prequel spin-off. Maybe both. The show could have him die in a way that sets up what we learn about him in the prequel. That would be a tidy bit of franchise planning. The Boys has shown it's capable of thinking that far ahead. What I find genuinely interesting about Soldier Boy's arc this season is that the show hasn't tried to redeem him. He's not a character on a journey toward understanding. He's not discovering the error of his ways. He's exactly who he always was, thawed out and plonked into a situation that's moved on without him, confused by a world he doesn't recognize, furious in the specific way of someone who believes things owe them more than they've received. The father-son dynamic he has with Homelander is a dark mirror of the one Homelander has with Ryan. Ryan is the son trying to become something better than his father. Homelander is the son who absorbed every worst quality his father had and magnified them. And Soldier Boy, looking at Homelander, sees something he recognizes and resents, a version of himself without the particular historical constraints that shaped him. Stronger, less restrained, given more than Soldier Boy was ever given, and apparently no more grateful for it. The scene in episode 4 where Soldier Boy is exposed and seemingly killed, and Homelander's reaction to that tells you a lot. He hesitates. He's confused by what he feels. He goes to the body alone, and there's something in the way he sits with it that suggests he actually wanted the relationship to be something it never was going to be. Soldier Boy didn't want a son. Homelander didn't understand what a father actually requires. Two people circling the thing they needed, neither of them capable of providing it to the other. And then the body bag opens, and we're back to business. Jensen Ackles is doing something quite specific with the performance, where Soldier Boy's competence and his smallness coexist without either cancelling out the other. He genuinely was America's first superhero. He genuinely survived things that should have killed him. And he's also genuinely, fundamentally, a limited and selfish person who mistakes toughness for depth. It's a carefully calibrated portrait, and it works. There's a particular irony in Soldier Boy being the one Homelander sent after Butcher, given that Butcher was also the person responsible for putting Soldier Boy back in cryo in Season 3. Butcher used him, the same way everyone uses everyone in this show, and then discarded him when he was no longer strategically useful. Soldier Boy's hatred of Butcher for that betrayal is one of the most human things about him. Not because it's justified exactly, but because it comes from a recognizable place. Being used and then abandoned by people who claim to need you is something Soldier Boy has experienced his whole life. From Vought onwards, he just doesn't usually have to face the person who did it while also being employed to hunt them down. The Season 5 trailers showed Homelander effectively sentencing Butcher to death by Soldier Boy, which is the kind of operational elegance Homelander enjoys. Having someone else do the thing in a way that also resolves a complication for him. What the trailers didn't show is what happens when Soldier Boy actually finds Butcher, which suggests that conversation goes somewhere other than a straightforward assassination. Whether Butcher talks him out of it, or something happens that redirects them both, or they come to some arrangement, that's the thread I'll be following most closely in episode 5 onwards. This one's a bit of a detour, but it's one I find genuinely intriguing, so let's sit with it for a moment. At the end of Season 2, Stormfront had been exposed by Starlight, Annie January, and Maeve as a literal Nazi, the wife of Frederick Vought himself, born in 1919, kept alive all this time by V1 coursing through her veins. Ryan, in a moment of protecting his mother, used his heat vision on her. Homelander, who had been in a relationship with her, stood and watched. She was left horribly disfigured, missing limbs, completely broken. Season 3 confirmed that she'd died, reportedly by suicide. End of story. Or so we thought. Then Soldier Boy, in episode 4, says something that fans immediately seized on. He asks Homelander about Stormfront. They have history together. She was involved with Vought during the same era he was. And he asks whether she actually died. "Did you see a body?" is how he puts it, and Homelander doesn't answer directly. He changes the subject, and Soldier Boy doesn't push it, but he clearly doesn't buy the answer. The "did you see a body" construction is practically a contractual obligation in genre television at this point. Every time a character says it, audiences are conditioned to start theorizing about whether the supposedly dead character is actually dead. It's Chekhov's corpse. The show deployed it very deliberately. Now, the Stormfront theories are all over the place. The most popular one is the super zombie idea, that her V1-based biology allowed her to survive and slowly regenerate, and that she's been kept somewhere, possibly in an even worse state than she was when we last saw her, slowly coming back. Another version is the cyborg theory, that Vought rebuilt her with technology of some kind, which sounds almost satirical until you remember this is a show that has featured a man who communicates sexually with sea life. Amusingly, the boys made a point this season of casually name-dropping The Last of Us. I mentioned The Last of Us is a throwaway line in episode 4, in a context about fungi and biological horror, which made some people think the show setting up a kind of zombie Stormfront scenario. I don't think that's quite right, but the reference doesn't feel accidental. Here's my honest read. I think Soldier Boy's question is primarily setting up Vought Rising, the upcoming prequel series about the 1950s era of supes. Stormfront features in that story, as does Soldier Boy. The show is planting the seed of uncertainty here, not necessarily resolving it in Season 5, as a way of building interest in the prequel. Is she alive? Becomes a question Vought Rising can play with. That said, a Stormfront reappearance in the Season 5 finale is not out of the question. If she has survived in some diminished form, she could theoretically appear in Homelander's orbit as a warning about what awaits him, what immortality looks like when it goes wrong, what V1 preservation actually means for a body that's been that badly damaged. There's a thematic richness to having her show up as a kind of ghost of Christmas future for Homelander's ambitions, a man who desperately wants to become immortal, confronted with what immortality has actually done to the person closest to him who had it. Whether the show goes there is another question. Aya Cash, who plays Stormfront, hasn't been announced as part of Season 5's cast in any official capacity, though these things are kept close to the chest, and sometimes characters appear without any advance announcement. I'm filing this one under genuinely uncertain, rather than likely or unlikely. It's interesting. It might mean something in Season 5. It will almost certainly mean something for the wider franchise. And it's the kind of question that keeps you thinking at 1 a.m, which is either a problem or a feature depending on your perspective. There's a broader point worth making about how The Boys handles the question of whether anyone ever truly exits the story. The show has a history of characters who seem definitively gone and then resurface in ways that are meaningful rather than gratuitous. Bob the Drag Queen in Season 1. Homelander's vision of Madeline Stillwell, which has appeared this season again. Becca, present in Ryan whether she appears on screen or not. The show treats its dead as alive in the emotional sense. Still shaping events, still informing choices, still there in the space between scenes. Stormfront as a narrative ghost, as a warning about V1's costs, as a complicated ghost in Homelander's history. That feels like something the show might use even if we never see her physically. The question Soldier Boy asked about whether she's really dead might not need to be answered definitively. It might be enough to have planted the uncertainty, to let it exist in the margins of the season the way some of the best questions in this show do. There's a thing Annie January does that Erin Moriarty has always played beautifully, where she holds herself together through sheer force of will in situations that would crack most people in half and then completely falls apart the moment she gets a second alone. It's not weakness, it's more like compartmentalization as a survival strategy. The face she shows the world is calm and determined. The person underneath is exhausted and scared and doing everything she can to not let that show. Season 5 has put that quality to the test more than any season before it. She's running a resistance, genuinely running one, with logistics and networks and people who've put their safety in her hands. She's dealing with the fact that Homelander controls the government and has the legal authority, such as it is in a martial law situation, to arrest anyone who speaks against him. She's trying to hold the boys together while Butcher is becoming something she doesn't recognise. And in the middle of all that, she discovers in episode 4 that she has a biological father she never knew about, and a brother who's been living a completely separate life. The brother storyline is the one I'm most curious about, because it feels deliberately personal in a season that's been very focused on parent-child relationships. Ryan and Homelander, Butcher and his father Sam, Soldier Boy and Homelander. And now Annie, who grew up without a biological family, finding out there's been one all along. What that does to her, how it complicates her identity, her understanding of herself, feels like something the show is going to develop in the remaining episodes. Her near breakdown in episode 3 is worth sitting with. She thought Huey was dead after the confrontation at Stan Edgar's bunker. She'd seen Cindy snap someone's neck in front of her and misread what was happening. She fled, abandoned the group in the moment of their worst need. And then she had to come back and reckon with that, which is something the show handles with real care. She's not just the hero who got scared. She's a person trying to figure out how much she can take, and whether the answer is enough to get them through this. Her position on the virus is one of the more complicated ones on the team. She knows it would kill her. She accepts this, in the way you accept something when you've decided the cause is larger than yourself. But she also knows it would kill Kimiko, and she and Kimiko have a relationship that matters. The show doesn't let her be noble about this without also showing the cost. Now looking ahead to the ending. In the original comics, Starlight and Huey are the two survivors. The show has been reasonably faithful to this, in the sense that it's treated both of them as the emotional core around which everything else is built. Comic faithful or not, killing either of them would fundamentally change what the show is. Kripke himself said something to this effect, referencing Mike from Stranger Things as a comparison, noting that killing certain characters changes the identity of the show itself. I think Annie survives. I think she earns it, which is different from just being safe. She's made hard choices this season. She's been frightened, she's failed, she's come back. Whatever ending the show gives the resistance she's built, it needs to feel like a consequence of everything she put into it. A world slightly better than the one it would have been without her. That feels like the right note for her arc to end on. What I think is underappreciated about Annie's arc across 5 seasons is how the show has consistently refused to let her be simply good. She's not a hero in the uncomplicated sense. She's a person who has been used as a symbol her entire life. First by Vought, which constructed her public persona as a product, and then by the Resistance, which needs her image as much as it needs her powers. The show has always been honest about that cost, about the difference between being admired and being known. Her relationship with Huey, for all that it's been one of the show's warmest elements, is also one of its more honest portrayals of two people who genuinely love each other and still have to actively choose not to disappear into each other's expectations. There have been moments in every season where one or both of them was using the relationship as a substitute for dealing with harder questions. The show doesn't condemn them for it, it just notices. And then there's the Starlight the Resistance knows, versus the Annie that her inner circle knows, versus whatever she is when she's genuinely alone, and not performing either of those versions of herself. The show has given Erin Moriarty the space to play all three, sometimes in the same scene. That's the kind of writing that makes a character worth caring about for 5 years. What her life looks like after is a genuinely open question. The Resistance presumably continues in some form, or transitions into something more formal. Her relationship with Huey is probably the one fixed point in her future, and even that has been tested. But tested things that hold have a particular kind of strength to them. I think they hold. The Boys begins with a very specific kind of horror. Huey Campbell is standing on a street corner with his girlfriend Robin. She's talking to him about something. There's a blur, and then she's just gone. A train, running at full speed, goes straight through her, and Huey is left standing there holding her hands, just her hands, looking at them. It's played almost silently, and it's genuinely disturbing in a way that's hard to shake. Everything in 5 seasons of this show follows from that moment. All of it. Huey's involvement with the boys, his relationship with Starlight, his losses, his moral compromises, his growth, his failures, all of it is downstream of 2 seconds on a street corner in season 1. It's an interesting choice to anchor a show about systemic power and corporate corruption in something so personal, but it works because Huey functions as the show's moral compass in a way that none of the other characters quite manages. Not because he's always right, he isn't, but because he asks the questions out loud that everyone else is thinking privately and refuses to stop asking them even when the answer is inconvenient. This season, His primary conflict with Butcher is over the virus. Huey cannot accept that releasing a weapon that kills Starlight is the right answer, regardless of the broader tactical calculus. He's called it out. He's tried to steal the virus. He's been overruled and outvoted, and he's kept pushing back. There's something genuinely admirable about that stubbornness, even when it makes him a difficult person to work with. The odd moment in episode 4, where he's uncharacteristically cruel about Starlight in front of the group, in a way that doesn't quite sound like him, is unexplained as of the episodes we've seen, and it's nagging at me. Whether it's something the show will address or a moment of stress coming out sideways, I'm genuinely not sure, but it felt notable. His history with Butcher is the other through line this season. They've been at each other since the virus debate started, but there's still something underneath the antagonism that neither of them quite abandons. Butcher saved him in various senses over the course of this show. Huey saved Butcher in various senses. They've been each other's worst influences and occasional best allies. The shape their relationship takes in the finale, whether it ends in genuine rupture or some kind of painful resolution, feels like one of the things the show is building toward. In the comics, Huey ends up as the sole survivor of the boys in the traditional sense, not counting Starlight. They retire, they live their lives. It's bittersweet in a way that feels honest about the costs of everything that happened. The show may not go there exactly, but the spirit of it, Huey earning something quiet after a very loud few years, feels like the right destination. Jack Quaid has always been the secret engine of this show, and I don't say that to minimise what Urban and Star and everyone else brings, but Quaid's job is the hardest. Because playing the emotional centre of a show, this chaotic and dark, requires an enormous amount of precision. Too much and Huey feels naive. Huey feels too little and he stops functioning as the audience's way in. He's calibrated it perfectly for 5 years, and I think the finale will give him a scene that acknowledges that. There's something I find worth noting about the specific way the show has developed Huey's grief, because it's one of the more unusual things it's done. Robin, his girlfriend who dies in the first minutes of episode 1 of season 1, never really disappears from the show. Not because she's mentioned constantly, but because the shape of what happened to her is present in everything Huey does. He fell in love with Starlight, partly because she was a super who turned out to be a person, which is the specific opposite of what killed Robin. He joined the boys because someone powerful killed someone he loved and walked away. Everything flows from that. The show has never let him forget it, and neither has he. His moral line about the virus, about Starlight, about Kimiko, about the specific people whose deaths would be required, is also a line about Robin, about not letting the cost of stopping something terrible be measured in the lives of people you love. He's already paid that cost once. He's not going to choose to pay it again if there's any other option. The odd behaviour in episode 4, the cruelty towards Starlight in front of the group, is the thing I'm most uncertain about. It doesn't read as authentically Huey. He's been under enormous pressure, and stress makes people behave in ways that surprise even themselves. So it may be exactly that, a crack rather than a change. But I'm keeping it in the back of my mind as a potential thread the show intends to pull. His relationship with his own father has been part of his story since season 1, and season 5 hasn't abandoned it. The contrast with Butcher killing his father is deliberate and quiet. Huey, who still has his father, treating the relationship with the care it deserves. As small a detail as that is, it matters. It's the show maintaining the distinction between these two men, even as it pushes them into conflict. There's a version of this season where Huey's most important scene isn't with Homelander or with the virus or in the middle of any of the action set pieces. It's a scene with Butcher near the end, where everything that's accumulated between them over 5 seasons finally has to come out and be looked at directly. The show has been circling that scene since season 2. Every confrontation they've had has been building toward one that doesn't get interrupted, doesn't get redirected, where the two of them actually say the thing. What Huey would say to Butcher, if given the chance, is something I find myself thinking about. He'd probably be angry first. There's a lot of legitimate anger there after the secrets Butcher has kept, and the choices he's made unilaterally, and the way he's consistently decided that Huey's objections are a logistical problem to be managed rather than a moral position to be engaged with. But underneath the anger, I think there's grief. Not for what Butcher did, but for what Butcher was, briefly, at his best. For what it cost to watch that erode. The boys mourning Billy Butcher has been happening quietly in the background of several seasons, and the finale might make it explicit. Whether Huey is the person who's left standing at the end to grieve properly, to carry it, to tell the story, that feels right. In the comics, Huey is the one who survives to tell it. I think the show honours that, even in its own terms. Episode 7 is called The Frenchman, the Female, and the Man Called Mother's Milk. I've been thinking about that title since it was announced, because Carl Urban has said clearly and specifically that major characters don't make it out of episode 7's end credits. He said it casually at a fan event in Australia, in the way you say something when you're proud of it, and also slightly want to prepare people for what's coming. There are major characters that don't even make it to the end credits of 7. An episode named after 3 specific characters, in a season where the showrunner has promised major deaths, in a position in the running order that Carl Urban specifically flagged. That is not a coincidence, and it fills me with a kind of quiet dread that I'm choosing to sit with rather than fight. So let's talk about Frenchie, Kimiko, and MM properly, and then think about who might not make it through. Frenchie and Kimiko are, in many ways, the emotional heart of the show's softer register, which is a strange thing to say about a show that is frequently deeply violent, but they bring something the others don't. A kind of gentleness with each other that survives everything the world throws at them. Their communication, Frenchie speaking, Kimiko signing back, the two of them finding a language between them that isn't available to anyone else, is one of the show's most consistent sources of actual warmth. Frenchie came from a background of crime and addiction, carrying a lot of guilt about his past. Kimiko survived unimaginable trauma at the hands of the Seven, and spent seasons finding her way back to herself. They found each other in the middle of all that. The relationship isn't romantic in any conventional sense, or it wasn't for most of the show. It's something closer to the kind of bond that forms between people who've pulled each other out of something dark. They're a package deal in terms of narrative. If one of them dies, the other's arc becomes entirely about grief. If both die, the show loses something genuinely irreplaceable. If neither dies, you have to wonder whether Carl Urban's warning is pointing elsewhere. Mother's Milk has the most overtly personal arc of the 3. His obsession with Homelander, specifically with Soldier Boy, and the family tragedy connected to him from season 3, has been one of the show's more complex pieces of characterization. He has a daughter, Janine, and an ex-wife, Monique, and they've been one of the show's persistent symbols of what the boys are supposedly fighting for, the ordinary life that all this chaos is meant to protect. His arc has been about balancing that protection against the personal rage that also drives him. In the comics, Butcher kills MM. It's brutal, and it's meant to show how far gone Butcher is. The show won't do it that way. The relationship between Butcher and MM in the show is too different, too mutual, too much about two people who genuinely care about each other, even when they're at each other's throats. But a death in episode 7 that involves Butcher making a terrible choice? That feels like the show's territory. The honest answer is that I think at least one of these 3 doesn't make it through episode 7. The episode title is too pointed, the warning too specific. My best guess, and I want to be clear that it is a guess, is that Frenchie dies. His arc has a particular kind of completeness to it. The man who spent years unable to forgive himself, who found something worth living for, who contributed to something larger than himself. It's the shape of a story that has arrived somewhere, and Karen Fukuhara's Kimiko surviving him would be an absolutely devastating piece of storytelling, in the best and worst sense. But I'm hoping I'm wrong. I genuinely am. Every time I think about the two of them, or about MM and his daughter. I hope there's a version of this where they all make it through. The show has earned the right to go either way, and that's a remarkable position to be in 5 seasons in. Let me talk about each of them individually a bit more, because they each deserve it. Frenchie has one of the most specific voices on the show, not his actual voice, though Toma Capone's accent is a thing of beauty, but the way he sees the world. He finds things beautiful that other people have stopped being able to see. He makes things, weapons, yes, but also food, small gestures, connections. He's the person on the team who most consistently reminds everyone else that there was a world before all this and there might be one after. His guilt about his past, the lives he hurt before he found his way to the boys, has been a thread the show has returned to carefully rather than constantly. He carries it without letting it define him, which is harder than it sounds. Kimiko's journey has been one of the most unusual in the show, because so much of it has happened without words. Karen Fukuhara has been extraordinary in a role that requires enormous expressiveness in the absence of spoken dialogue, and she's delivered it every season. Kimiko choosing her own name, Kimiko finding ways to connect with people around the language barrier, Kimiko using violence in a show that often asks whether violence can be used justly. These are all things the show has handled with real intelligence, and MM Laz Alonso has been one of the most consistently underrated performers in the ensemble. Mother's Milk's arc this season has been about the particular cost of commitment, of being someone who shows up, keeps showing up, even when the situation makes showing up feel pointless. His family arc, his daughter Janine, has always been the show's reminder that there are people outside this immediate world who are affected by what happens inside it. Janine doesn't know the specifics. She knows her father keeps disappearing. She knows something takes him away. The cost of heroism, measured in a child wondering when her dad is coming home, is one of the show's most quietly devastating through lines. If any of them die, I think it's in service of something. Not spectacle, not shock, but consequence. The show has always treated its deaths as arguments, not events, and episode 7 will be no different. Let's talk about Kevin then. The Deep, whose actual name is Kevin Moskowitz, which the show uses periodically for maximum deflating effect, has been a genuinely fascinating character study throughout this series, and I mean that in a way that isn't entirely a compliment. He is a sexual predator. He has been from his first scene, when he assaults Starlight as a condition of joining the Seven. He's faced some consequences for it. He's faced very few consequences for it, really. He's been fired from the Seven and rehired. He's been to rehab, which he treated as a public relations exercise. He joined a cult. He married someone from the cult and got divorced. He married an octopus. I mean spiritually married an octopus. It's complicated. What Chase Crawford has done with this character, despite everything, is find the specific sadness inside a man who is genuinely pathetic. Not tragic in a sympathetic way, but pathetic in the clinical sense. Someone who mistakes being powerful for being worthy, and who keeps discovering, again and again, that having powers doesn't solve the problem of being Kevin Moskowitz. He wants to matter. He wants to be admired. He makes choices exclusively on the basis of where the power currently sits, and then acts confused when those choices leave him feeling empty. This season, he's back at Vought, currying favour with Homelander, and he's recently betrayed Black Noir, the second version, not the original, by delivering Stan Edgar to Homelander in exchange for better standing. Which is a deeply Kevin thing to do. The relationship with Black Noir too is now strained, because even the silent, mysterious new Black Noir apparently has standards. Will the Deep face any real consequences for his actions? It's a genuine question the show has been putting off for 5 seasons. Chase Crawford has said in interviews that he'd like his character to face some reckoning. Whether the show delivers that, and in what form, is uncertain. There are a few possibilities. One is that the Deep survives but is humiliated, stripped of his powers or his position or both, left to exist as an ordinary man, which is the thing he would find most unbearable. Another is that he dies in a way that's played for bathos rather than weight. Not a heroic death, not a particularly meaningful death, just the universe eventually running out of patience with Kevin Moskowitz. A third is that he somehow, improbably, does something right in the finale. A moment of actual choice, actual consequence, that isn't entirely about self-preservation. I want to be honest, I don't think his arc ends cleanly in any direction. The show has never treated him cleanly. He's occupied this uncomfortable space where he's too pathetic to be a proper villain and too culpable to be a sympathetic figure. And the finale probably leaves him in that same uncomfortable middle. Maybe he survives, maybe he doesn't. Either way, I suspect the show doesn't give him the satisfying reckoning he probably deserves, because the whole point of characters, like Kevin, is that the world doesn't always give people what they deserve. And that's fine, actually. That's honest. The thing the show has always done well with the Deep is refuse to let him be a punchline entirely. He's funny, in the way that genuine pathos is sometimes funny. The scene of him grieving A-Train's death, while also visibly calculating what it means for his own position, is exactly the kind of moment where you laugh, and then feel slightly bad about laughing. But underneath the comedy is something the show treats seriously. The question of what it means to be a mediocre person given extraordinary power. The Deep specific crime, the assault on Starlight in Season 1, was the show's way of naming something that usually exists in the subtext of stories about powerful institutions. The price of admission. The normalized abuse that everyone knows about and no one addresses because the people who would address it are the same people who benefit from it existing. The show has never let that go, even when it seemed to be moving on from it. Every moment of Kevin Moskowitz seeking validation or clawing back status carries the weight of what he did and what he got away with. Whether he faces real consequences in the end is one of those questions the show has been deferring for 5 seasons. Real consequences would require the show to believe that institutions ultimately correct themselves when presented with overwhelming evidence of harm, which isn't really what the boys believes. So probably he doesn't face them. Probably he finds a way to exist in whatever the post-Homelander world looks like, diminished, and still fundamentally Kevin, still fundamentally alone with himself in the specific way of people who've never developed any genuine inner life. And maybe that's consequence enough. Maybe it isn't. The show won't pretend to know. Episode 2 opens with A-Train's funeral. Oh Father, played by David Diggs, is at the pulpit delivering the eulogy, and within about 45 seconds, he's claiming that Starlight's followers are literally possessed by demons, that they eat babies and that the congregation isn't there to be blessed but to do war. It's delivered in a voice that has a particular quality, not just loud, but hypnotic, compulsive. You can see the crowd respond to it, and you can also see Homelander in the front row getting increasingly uncomfortable, which is a sight we haven't seen much of. Something actually unsettling Homelander. Oh Father is a new character, and David Diggs is doing something really interesting with him. The obvious read is that he's a supe with a screaming sonic power, like DC's Black Canary, but for sermons rather than combat. But the show has been careful to show his effect on crowds as something less precisely supernatural and more deeply human, a kind of charisma that doesn't require the volume to be turned up. He walks into a room and people want to follow him, and that's more frightening than a superpowered scream. His relationship with Homelander is the most interesting dynamic introduced this season. Homelander has been positioning himself as a divine figure, and Oh Father has been building a genuine religious infrastructure around that positioning, but there's a question of who actually controls this arrangement. Homelander thinks he does. He thinks Oh Father is a useful tool for consolidating his hold on the public, but Oh Father's power is congregational loyalty, and congregations are funny things. They can be redirected. The person at the pulpit isn't always working for the person at the top, Sister Sage is a different kind of interesting. She's been present since season 4, positioned as the smartest person in the world. Literally, that's her established characteristic, and someone whose Phase 2 plan has been hinted at, but never fully explained. She's been manipulating things from within Vought, from within Homelander's inner circle, and the shape of her long game isn't entirely clear. She has history with Thomas Godolkin from Gen V Season 2, and her choice to have him killed, despite her feelings for him, tells you a lot about how she operates. She's ruthless, even when it costs her personally. What I think is true about Sage is that she is not loyal to Homelander. She's never been loyal to Homelander. She's loyal to whatever Phase 2 is, and she's been using the proximity to power to move towards it. The question is what Phase 2 actually involves, and whether it's something the boys would find better or worse than the current situation. There's a theory that Sage is the one who ultimately turns on Homelander from within, that the inside job is her contribution to the finale. She has the intelligence to outmaneuver him, assuming his V1 enhanced instincts don't catch it first. And there's something fitting about the idea that Homelander is ultimately undone, at least in part by someone he trusted. Father's potential arc is slightly different. His hypnotic preaching and crowd manipulation powers suggest he might be involved in some kind of public moment. A broadcast, a rally, a moment where the public's relationship with Homelander shifts. In a show that's always been about media and image and the performed quality of heroism, ending things with a moment of genuine public reckoning rather than just a private battle would be appropriate. Father's powers could theoretically work in that direction, deprogramming the congregation, redirecting their loyalty, using the same tools of fervour that built Homelander's cult to dismantle it. Eric Kripke mentioned in an interview with TV Guide that there's a line in episode 7 that Homelander says, "The craziest line we could think of, that has already happened in real life." He wouldn't say what it is, but the implication is that the show has been writing its political satire, and the real world has been keeping pace or overtaking it. That's a particular flavour of bleak commentary, and it suggests that Father's role in the season's political dimension has more to run. There's a version of the final episodes where Sister Sage's Phase 2 turns out to be something entirely unexpected. Not an alliance with the boys, not a direct betrayal of Homelander, but a third option that serves her own vision of how things should be restructured. The smartest person in the world, remember, is not necessarily the most aligned with anyone else's interests. Sage has been operating on a longer timeline than anyone around her this season. She outlasted Godolkin. She managed Homelander. She knows things about how power moves that nobody else in the room does. What she builds with that knowledge, in the end, is the question. Father's specific dynamic with Homelander is the one I'd most want to see developed in the remaining episodes. The discomfort Homelander feels around him is such a specific, unusual thing for the show to establish. Homelander has been disturbed by very few people in 5 seasons. Genuine power does that to people, puts them beyond the usual social anxieties. But Father seems to touch something. Whether it's the religious framing specifically, or the crowd loyalty that isn't quite his, or something about the cadence of Father's authority that echoes something Homelander recognises from his own childhood, something Vought gave him or withheld. I'm curious to see what the show does with it. David Diggs, for what it's worth, has spoken about the character as someone genuinely convinced of his own righteousness, which is interesting. Not a cynic pretending to be a believer, an actual true believer in whatever Father's particular theology is. Those are always the scariest kind. Let me spend a moment on what Sister Sage might actually be building, because the show has been tantalising about it. Phase 2 has been mentioned as something she had planned even before Homelander fully consolidated power, which suggests it's not reactive. It's not a contingency she developed in response to current events. It was always the destination, which means Homelander was always a means to an end. The most compelling theory I've seen is that Sage's end goal involves restructuring how supes exist in society in a fundamental way. not eliminating them. She's a supe herself, and her intelligence as a superpower is fundamental to who she is. But changing the relationship between supes and institutions, making that relationship more explicit, more governed, more accountable in some way that serves her particular vision of how things should work. She's the smartest person in the world, and intelligent people, in this show's experience, are not automatically benevolent, but they do tend to have systems-level thinking that other characters lack. The question of whether Phase 2 is better or worse than the status quo for the average person is something the show may deliberately leave ambiguous. The Boys has never been very interested in clean ideological victories. If Sage's plan is revealed, and it's something the Boys find partially workable and partially horrifying, that would be very on-brand. A world where the immediate threat is neutralised, but the structural problems are addressed in ways that create new ones. Which is, honestly, how most real attempts at institutional change go. Susan Hayward has been doing extraordinary work with Sage this season. The specific pleasure of watching someone who is always the cleverest person in any room navigate a situation where being clever has limits, where even perfect intelligence can't fully account for irrational actors like Homelander, is one of the quieter satisfactions of the season so far. 4 episodes in, and we still haven't seen Marie Moreau, Jordan Lee, Emma Meyer, Sam Riordan, or Annabeth Moreau. They've been confirmed to appear in Season 5. They were featured in the promotional material. They're coming. The show has just been keeping them in reserve, which is actually the right call. The Boys has always had too many plates spinning at once, and Season 5 is no exception. Introducing the Gen V characters too early would have either overshadowed the storylines already in motion, or required the show to split its focus in ways it couldn't afford. Better to keep them off screen until the moment their presence is actually necessary. And Kripke has been clear that when they do appear, they won't be the ones to save the day. The focus stays on the original cast. The Gen 5 characters contribute, they don't replace. Marie Moreau is the one whose contribution feels most clearly mapped out in advance. Her power, blood manipulation, operates at a level the show has been careful to establish as genuinely extraordinary. In Gen 5 Season 2, she was compared directly to Homelander in terms of raw potential. Her ability to interact with Compound 5 on a molecular level, to purge it from someone's bloodstream, to alter its properties, was demonstrated in the spin-off and feels like something the main show is going to need. There's also the V1 connection. Marie's blood has been established as carrying traces of what Godolkin developed in his Project Odessa experiments, a variant of the original V1 formula, which makes her one of the few people in this story who could theoretically interact with Homelander's V1 resistance in a useful way. Whether that means rendering him susceptible to the virus or doing something else entirely is not yet clear, but she's been positioned for it. Kripke's caveat is worth taking seriously. He said the Gen V characters won't be the heroes of this story. They won't swoop in and save the day, which suggests their role is to support rather than to conclude, to enable the original Boys to do what needs to be done, rather than doing it themselves. That's actually a fairly elegant way to handle a crossover that could easily have felt like it was hijacking the finale. Jordan Lee is interesting because their powers are versatile in combat. Female form fires energy blasts, male form has enhanced durability and strength. And they have personal stakes in the conflict through their relationship with Marie. Emma Meyer, who can shrink and grow by purging and eating, might have a more tactical role in the finale. Sam Riordan is the wild card. He ended Gen V Season 2 aligned with Homelander, which means his Season 5 appearance comes with the question of which side he's actually on now. And then there's Annabeth Moreau, Marie's sister, whose precognitive abilities have been established as a genuine strategic asset. The ability to foresee danger, even in limited flashes, could be decisive in a finale where the Boys will presumably be outgunned and relying on intelligence and timing rather than brute force. I've been enjoying the meta commentary the show has occasionally slipped in about its own franchise building. The Worm, the soup screenwriter in episode 2, makes a pointed joke about season finales and setting up prequels during Homelander's brainstorming session about A-Train's replacement. It's the show winking at itself about Vought rising, about the expanded universe, about the business logic that runs beneath the storytelling. It's also sort of endearing that Kripke can write a joke like that while building exactly the thing the joke is about. I just want to see Marie and Starlight in the same scene. I've been saying this since Gen 5 Season 2. Two of the most interesting women in this franchise. One of them the established hero and resistance leader. One of them the raw potential who hasn't found her footing yet. That scene writes itself. I'm hoping the show gives it to us. Sam Reardon is the one I'm most uncertain about among the Gen V cast, for the specific reason that he ended Gen V Season 2 aligned with Homelander. Not reluctantly, not under duress, he made a choice. He has enormous physical power, comparable to Homelander in terms of raw strength and durability, and in Season 2 he chose to deploy it in Homelander's direction. Whether Season 5 addresses his allegiance directly, whether he's redeemable, whether his relationship with his trauma and his past self has moved him in any different direction, is a genuinely open question. He's the kind of character who could matter a lot or barely appear, depending on how the show handles the Gen V integration. Jordan Lee is interesting for different reasons. For their combat versatility, the male-female form switching and the different power sets each form carries, makes them practically useful in ways that other characters aren't. And their relationship with Marie gives them stakes in the outcome that aren't just abstract. Two people who found each other at Godolkin, who went through the chaos of Gen V Season 2 together, navigating a world that's even more dangerous now. What happens to them in the aftermath of whatever this season brings is something Gen V Season 3, if it gets made, would presumably pick up. Emma the Size Changer might have the most tactically interesting role in the finale if the show decides to use her. Small enough to be undetected, large enough to cause serious damage when needed. That's the kind of power set a well-written finale would find a specific use for. I hope they do. There's a broader question the Gen 5 integration raises, which is about what the franchise looks like after this season. Gen 5 Season 3 is presumably in some stage of development, and the choices the show makes in Season 5 about which of those characters survive, what state they're in, what alliances they've formed or broken, all of that feeds directly into what a third season has to work with. Which is an unusual thing to factor into watching a finale, that some of the decisions being made aren't just about this story, but about the next one. The Boys has been thoughtful about its franchise building in ways that not every long-running franchise manages. The Vought Rising prequel is genuinely interesting as a concept. The 1950s, Soldier Boy, Stormfront, the early years of Vaught's American operation, the moment when the superhero mythology was being constructed rather than simply maintained. That's rich material, and the way Season 5 has been seeding it, through references to Fort's Harmony and the original V1 experiments and bomb site, suggests real planning. Franchises that end well are franchises where the ending and the beginning of the next thing feel like a continuous piece of storytelling rather than two separate business decisions. Whether Annabeth Moreau's precognitive flashes, which the show used quite sparingly in Gen V Season 2, get deployed in a more substantial way, here is something I'm curious about. The ability to foresee specific danger has obvious tactical applications in a finale where the boys will almost certainly be outgunned and reliant on timing and intelligence. And it gives Annabeth a concrete reason to be in the room rather than an abstract one. We'll see. The comic's ending is worth knowing about because it's been shaping fan expectations all season, even for people who've never read them. And the adaptation has gone in substantially different directions from the source material. The short version, and I'll keep it brief because most people watching a show in its 5th season have at least a passing familiarity with the source material, is that the comic ending is extremely bleak. In the comics, Black Noir is revealed to be a secret clone of Homelander, created by Vought as a contingency in case Homelander ever needed to be stopped. Black Noir has been, throughout the comics, the one committing the worst atrocities and framing Homelander for them. When the truth comes out, Homelander has a kind of breakdown, and the two of them fight. Black Noir tears Homelander apart, literally. And then Butcher, who has spent the entire series wanting to kill Homelander, has to settle for killing Black Noir with a crowbar, because Homelander is already dead. After that, Butcher goes absolutely off the rails. He kills MM. He kills Frenchie. He kills Kimiko. He kills people who trusted him. Huey eventually stabs him to death. It's the bleakest possible expression of the show's central thesis about how fighting monsters can turn you into one. Kripke confirmed in 2020 that Black Noir in the show is not a Homelander clone, which was honestly the right call. The original plot is interesting, but would have felt like a cheat in the adaptation. The original Black Noir was killed in Season 4, the current Black Noir 2 is entirely his own person, and so that particular reveal is off the table. The function of Black Noir in the comics, the genetically equivalent individual who can actually match Homelander in a fight, has been transferred to Ryan. That transfer has been happening quietly since Season 2, and this season has made it explicit. Ryan is the show's version of that story. The show's Butcher is also a fundamentally different character from the comic version. He's darker in some ways, more compromised in others, but there's a vein of something more human running through him that the comics version doesn't quite have, which means the Butcher kills everyone ending would be a betrayal of what the show has built with him. The adaptation has been consistent about this. It uses the comics as a general direction, not a script. What the show has kept from the comics, in spirit at least, is the sense that winning will cost something significant, that Huey and Starlight are the ones who come out the other side, and that the world, after Homelander, isn't tidily fixed. That much feels preserved. What it's added, Ryan, who doesn't exist in the source material at all, the deeper emotional life of Homelander, Becca as a real person rather than a background tragedy, the entire Gen 5 universe, those additions have made it richer than the original, which I say as someone who actually respects the comics. One thing I find worth noting, the comics end with an epilogue set 10 years later in which supes are effectively extinct. The world moves on. Huey and Starlight have a life. It's bittersweet in the classic sense. The show can't quite do that. It has franchise obligations, sequels being developed, a prequel already announced, but the emotional spirit of it, the sense of a world that has moved beyond this particular nightmare, feels like something the finale will reach for. Not a clean ending, a real one. What the show has always done better than the source material is care about the emotional truth of its characters at the same time as it's being smart about power and institutions. The comics are a great piece of work, but they're a savage piece of work, deliberately alienating, deliberately excessive, interested in pushing buttons rather than building attachment. The show has humanized everything. Homelander, of all people, is more emotionally complex in the adaptation than in the original. That humanization isn't a softening of the critique, it's an intensification of it. It's harder to sit with a monster you understand than one you can simply hate. The specific comic storylines the show has departed from most significantly are worth a moment. The original Compound V conspiracy that drove the first seasons gave way to something more nuanced. It wasn't a secret plot to create supes specifically to control markets. It was a decades-long accumulation of corporate decisions by people who convinced themselves each step was justified. The show turned a conspiracy into something closer to the actual structure of institutional wrongdoing, which is messier and less satisfying and considerably more true. Vought as a corporation is a more interesting villain in the show than in the comics, I think, because it's not a cartoon evil operation. It's a company that tells itself a story about its own necessity, that employs thousands of people who mostly believe they're doing their jobs, that operates through layers of plausible deniability and legitimate business practice. The corruption is structural, not just personal. That's why getting rid of Homelander doesn't fix everything. That's why the ending won't be a clean victory. Carl Urban said it at a fan event in Australia, pretty much unprompted, leaning into the microphone. Nobody is safe. Fatalities right from the get-go. Let's go. He said it again at a separate event, and when asked specifically about the deaths in the season, he gave the answer I mentioned earlier about episode 7, about major characters not making it out of the end credits, about the finale itself coming with a warning. These are not casual remarks. You don't say things like that and have them be accidental. Urban is an actor who's been doing press for 5 seasons. He knows how interviews work. When he issues specific warnings about specific episodes, it's because the show is worth preparing for. But nobody is safe exists in a specific context for this show, and it's worth understanding what Kripke has actually said about how they approach character deaths. From an SFX magazine interview, Kripke said, "It bums me out when you have a big epic sci-fi show, and then at the end, it's like, oh, everyone's fine. I keep yelling at the screen, things cost things, you can't just get away with this. So yes, I wouldn't get too attached to any single character." That's a philosophy, not a promise of massacre. It's the argument that stakes need to be real, that consequences need to land, that a war shouldn't end without anyone getting hurt. It's not we will kill everyone, it's we will kill the people whose deaths mean something. Nathan Mitchell, who plays Black Noir 2, said something slightly more cryptic at a pre-season event. There are some things that are coming in Season 5 that you won't have on your bingo card, which is either genuinely surprising or a fairly standard bit of promotional mystique. Could go either way. What we know from the first 4 episodes is that the show has been keeping most of its major characters alive while clearing out the supporting cast with considerable efficiency. A-Train gone in episode 1, Ivy and Gavin in episode 1, Maverick and Cindy in episode 3, Butcher's father, off-screen, Rockhard and Jetstreak from Teenage Kicks, a body count that's building but hasn't yet hit the core group. Carl Urban's specific call-out of episode 7 as the bloodiest suggests that the core group casualties are coming in that penultimate hour, not the finale, which would be an interesting structural choice. Clear the board in episode 7, then spend episode 8, Blood and Bone, dealing with the consequences. That's an approach that would explain his framing. The shocking deaths happen first, and then the finale is about what comes after. Kripke has been clear about something else. He doesn't want gratuitous deaths. He wants deaths that mean something. He talks about Eddie in Stranger Things as a model of how it should be done, a character whose death serves the story, resonates emotionally, feels earned. The show has largely operated this way. When Bob died in Season 2, it hurt because Bob was good, and the show had made you care about him, and his death was the consequence of him trying to do the right thing. That's the template. There's a question lurking here that I think about sometimes, which is whether this show can end hopefully, whether the ending is allowed to be, if not happy exactly, then at least something other than total devastation. I think it can be. I think the show has earned something that leans toward hope, without being dishonest about the cost. Kripke has always been a writer who cares about the characters he creates. These people have been his for 5 years. I don't think he wants to leave them in complete ruin. Satisfying is the word that keeps coming up in cast interviews, and I think it means something specific. An ending where the emotional logic holds, where the characters arrive at places that feel consistent with who they are, where the deaths that happen feel necessary rather than gratuitous, and where the people who survive have earned their survival. That's a different thing from everyone dies, and it's a different thing from everyone lives happily ever after. It's the honest middle ground. I'm choosing to trust Kripke on this. He's earned it. There's a useful thing to hold on to when thinking about how this show handles death, which is that it has a very specific idea of what a death is for. It's not spectacle. It's not just raising stakes, though it does that. It's an argument. When Bob the drag queen died in Season 1, or when I think of how Becca died, or how Supersonic died, or how the first Black Noir died, each in ways that were specific to who they were, and what their story had been building toward. The show was making a point each time about what it costs to have a conscience in a system designed to punish people who do, about what happens when you trust the wrong people, about the specific violence required to maintain a lie at institutional scale. The deaths that are coming in episodes 7 and 8 will be arguments too. They'll say something about what was worth fighting for, about what the people who love these characters carry forward, about whether the world that exists after is worth the price of the one that was paid to get there. The A-Train death is actually a useful lens for this. Kripke has said he was initially resistant to killing him so early in the season. A-Train's redemption arc across 4 seasons, the journey from the supe who killed Robin, through self-serving choices and small acts of genuine courage, to someone who ultimately chose his community over Vought, was one of the more careful pieces of character work the show did. And the show killed him before we could breathe. 4 seasons in the first real demonstration of power Homelander performs this season. It's brutal. It's also, in retrospect, exactly right. It says, no arc is finished until it's finished. No redemption protects you from the machine, which is a harder and more honest thing to say than the alternative. Whatever happens in the final 2 episodes, I think that philosophy holds. The show will not kill people to shock, but it will absolutely kill people to mean something. I've been thinking about this all week, probably longer, honestly. Every Wednesday night after a new episode, I find myself in this holding pattern, turning the pieces over, trying to see the shape of where this is going. So here's where I've actually landed for each major character, as clearly as I can put it. Homelander. He dies, I think, but not before he gets the thing he's wanted, or a version of it, and discovers that it doesn't do what he thought it would. If he gets V1, it might kill him. The formula is unstable in ways the show has been very deliberate about establishing. If he doesn't get it, the virus becomes one component of how his reign ends, alongside a confrontation with Ryan and probably with Butcher. He doesn't simply walk off into the night. That's not what this story is. But the manner of his death matters, and I think the show will make it feel earned rather than convenient. Ryan survives but changed. I think he kills Homelander, or delivers a decisive blow that Butcher or someone else finishes. I think it costs him something he carries for the rest of his life. That guilt, the layer upon layer of it he's been accumulating, doesn't go away, but he survives it. He gets to be a person who lives with hard things rather than being destroyed by them. Butcher dies, I'm almost certain of it. The cancer, the mutation, the choices he's made, all of it has been building toward an ending, and I don't think the show would deny him one. Whether it's self-arranged, whether it's the cancer finally winning, whether it's a final choice that means something, I think he goes out doing something that is, in the end, worth doing. And I think it breaks something in Huey, and maybe in Ryan, and maybe in us. Soldier Boy. I genuinely don't know, and it's the uncertainty I find most interesting. He could die in service of stopping Homelander, in a final radiation blast that costs him his life, but removes what needs removing. He could survive and be shipped off to cryo again. He could end up being a loose thread that Vought Rising picks up. I'm leaning toward death, because the show needs that confrontation between father and son to have weight, and weight requires loss. Starlight survives. I'm as confident of this as I am of anything in this show. She's earned it, and the show needs her to earn it, not just to have it. Huey survives. Same reasoning. And I think his survival, alongside Annie, is one of the few things the finale gives without complicating. They've been through too much for the show to deny them each other. Frenchie or Kimiko or MM or some combination. This is the one that genuinely frightens me. The episode 7 title, Carl Urban's warning, the shape of their arcs. At least one of them doesn't make it. I think it's Frenchie. I hope I'm wrong. If it's MM, I think it happens in a way that's about his family, about Janine, about what he was fighting for all along. If it's Kimiko, and I find this genuinely hard to think about, the show would need to give her something worth it, some moment that justifies the loss. The Deep probably survives. probably faces no consequences commensurate with what he's done. That's the most honest ending for Kevin Moskowitz. The world doesn't always balance the books. Sister Sage turns on Homelander, I think. Phase 2 reveals itself in episodes 5 or 6, and it involves something that at least partially aligns with what the boys need, even if her reasons are entirely her own. Oh, father. Likely gone before the finale ends one way or another. His usefulness to Homelander has limits, and Homelander has a history of eliminating people once their usefulness expires, or the regime's collapse takes him with it. The Gen V characters contribute, don't save the day alone. Marie does something essential with Blood and V1 that enables the final confrontation, and then gets out of the way and lets the original boys finish it. And then there's the ending itself. Not the fight, but what comes after. The boys has always been interested in the morning after, in the question of what you do when the monster is gone, and the world is still the world, still full of all the systems and incentives that created the monster in the first place. Vought still exists. Compound V is still in people's bloodstreams. The public that cheered for Homelander doesn't just disappear. The show won't wrap that up neatly. It can't. But I think it ends with something that feels like possibility rather than despair. People still standing. People who know what it cost, moving forward anyway. That's probably the most honest thing it can do. There are a few characters I haven't spent a whole section on who are still nagging at me. Ashley Barrett, Vaught's head of hero management, has been one of the show's quietly brilliant creations for several seasons. She's not a villain. She's not a hero. She's a middle manager at an institution that does terrible things, who has convinced herself that keeping her job and keeping her head down is a form of neutral behaviour rather than a form of complicity. The show has been remarkably fair to her, while also never letting her off the hook. If the regime collapses, Ashley survives, I think. She's survived everything so far, through a combination of adaptability and the specific usefulness of someone who knows where all the bodies are. She'll find a way to be useful in the new order, whatever it is. Black Noir 2 is a genuine mystery, and I mean that in a slightly frustrated way. The show introduced this new character with a lot of apparent intention and hasn't quite followed through yet in terms of revealing what his deal is. He's been going method as a silent soup. He has history with the deep that's now fractured. He may or may not know things about Vaught's operations that other characters don't. 4 episodes in, he feels like someone the back half of the season will use in a way we haven't anticipated, which could be great or could be the season having committed to something it hasn't fully figured out how to deliver. I'm choosing to assume the former. The Jared Padalecki character. Mr. Marathon, who was announced as part of the season's cast, we haven't seen him yet in the first 4 episodes. He's coming. His power set and specific role in the story haven't been revealed, and the supernatural reunion aspect of his presence means the show is going to lean into it in whatever way Kripke has planned. Given that Misha Collins is also appearing, and both men have established fan relationships with Jensen Ackles, there's presumably a scene that brings all 3 together in some form. What that scene is, I genuinely have no idea. Kripke has always been someone who casts with intention rather than just for the fan service element, even when the fan service element is obviously present. Padalecki and Collins are not going to appear in The Boys Season 5 and do nothing. They're being placed somewhere that serves the story, which means whatever role Mr. Marathon plays, ally, antagonist, complication, something else entirely, it matters to the plot in some material way. The name Marathon suggests endurance, longevity, perhaps a super whose power involves sustained effort over time, rather than explosive bursts. Where that fits in the Season 5 landscape, I'm genuinely not sure, but I'd rather be surprised. The broader question of how many moving pieces the show can hold in its final 4 episodes without any of them being shortchanged is one that's been on my mind since episode 4. There's an enormous amount left to resolve. The virus, V1, Homelander and the Church, Ryan, Butcher's cancer, the Gen V characters, Sage's Phase 2, Soldier Boy and Butcher. The finale is 2 episodes away in the structure, and there's a lot of story left. The show has earned the benefit of the doubt. It's managed complex multi-thread storylines before, but the back half is going to need to move with real precision. And Ryan, one more thought on Ryan. His question, the one his whole arc has been building toward, is still the one I keep coming back to. I think the show believes he gets some say in what he becomes. I think it has to, or it wouldn't have built his story the way it has. One last thought on the shape of the ending, before we wind down. The Boys has always been a show about the gap between what America says it is and what it actually is. Between the mythology of heroism and the reality of power. Between the story Vought sells and the blood it stands on. The supes were always a metaphor, of course, for celebrity, for corporate branding, for the way societies create icons to manage their own anxiety rather than address the things causing it. But the show has never been reductive about that metaphor. It's let it be complicated. Let the supes be actual people with actual wounds who made actual choices. That complication is what's given it 5 seasons of material. The ending, whatever it is, needs to honour that complexity. It needs to say something true about the gap it's been exploring, not resolve it falsely. Which probably means the world after Homelander is recognisably better in some specific ways, and recognisably the same in others. Vought doesn't disappear. The incentive to create and exploit powerful people doesn't disappear. The public's appetite for heroes and their willingness to look away from what heroism requires doesn't disappear. But some things are different. Some people are dead who are standing in the way of better things. Some people are alive who've earned the right to try. And the show ends there, not at the resolution, but at the possibility of it. Which is, I think, the most honest place a show about power and accountability can end. Not, we fixed it, but the people who might try are still standing. That's enough. For a show like this, that's a lot. And one small thing I keep thinking about, that doesn't quite fit anywhere else. The show's title, The Boys. It's always been a slightly odd choice. There are women on the team. There are people of various backgrounds. It's not literally just boys. But the title has always pointed at something else. The scrappy, underpowered, morally compromised group of ordinary people pushing back against something that should be impossible to push back against. The ones who weren't chosen, who weren't given gifts, who weren't built for this, who showed up anyway. That's who the show has always been about. Whatever the finale does, I think it remembers that. The boys, the actual boys, and everyone else who showed up, against everything. One more time. Well, that's where my head is at. 4 episodes down, 4 to go, and the whole thing wraps on the 20th of May. I'll probably come back with something after the finale airs. A reaction, a breakdown of what happened versus what I predicted, an extended apology to Frenchie if I've been right about episode 7. We'll see. The Boys has been running since 2019. That's 7 years of a show that was somehow angrier and funnier and more genuinely disturbing than anything else on television. That found a way to be satirical about power and celebrity and institutional failure without ever losing sight of the individual human stories at the centre of it. It's a remarkable thing to have made, and whatever the finale does, I think it'll be remembered as one of the shows that mattered. If you've been watching along this season, I hope the next 4 episodes give you something worth having. If you're coming to it fresh, you have a lot of excellent and occasionally traumatizing viewing ahead of you. For now, though, it's late or early. Whenever you're listening to this, the theories are out, the predictions are made. Whatever happens, happens on May 20th, and then we'll know. Get some rest. I'll talk to you again soon. Actually, before I go completely, a brief thought on what it means to watch a show end when you've been watching it for a long time. The Boys premiered in 2019. Some of you have been with it from the beginning. Some of you picked it up recently and binged through. Either way, there's something particular about a finale season that doesn't apply to any other season. Every episode of Season 5 is also, in some sense, a countdown. Every scene with Butcher or Frenchie and Kimiko, or Homelander at his most terrifyingly human, or Huey trying to hold on to something worth holding on to, all of it carries the weight of knowing there's a last one coming. I find that bittersweet in a way I don't quite feel about other shows. The Boys has been angry and funny and disturbing and occasionally genuinely moving, and it's done all of those things on purpose, with craft, with something that feels like genuine conviction. Not all shows that run 5 seasons manage to feel like they have something to say in their 5th year. This one does. Whatever you think of the specific choices it's made or will make in the finale, that's a real achievement. So enjoy the remaining episodes. Whenever you get to them, let yourself feel what they make you feel. And if the finale breaks your heart a little, that's probably the show doing its job. It was always, underneath everything, a story about love, about the damage done to people who were never loved properly, about the ordinary, extraordinary thing of choosing to care about someone in a world that makes caring dangerous. That thread has run through all of it. All right, now I'm done. Good night, or good morning, or whatever it is where you are. Sleep well.